Hello and welcome to this podcast episode. My name is Leighton Kranak, and today I am here joined with another student at App State, Jonathan Luster. He is a business student here, and he's going to be joining me today to ask some questions in regards to climate change. And I'm going to be talking about climate change and how it relates to journalism, which is my major. So to start, do you want to give a little introduction, Johnny? I kind of did it for you. But
I'm Johnny Luster. I'm a business student here, as you said, and we're just here to get to the bottom of climate change with Leighton Kranak.
Yeah. So Johnny, so climate change is actually, it's one of the most prevalent and prominent dangers that we face our entire world today. You know about climate change. I'm sure you've heard of it. Of course, yeah. So it affects everything around us. It affects our weather, our habitats, our environments, the animals, and the people. It can completely destroy us if we don't do anything about it. Humans have been the biggest contributors to this, to climate change, through the use of fossil fuels, greenhouse gases, and other emissions. So since the Industrial Revolution, there's been a significant rise in the amount of carbon and greenhouse emissions, and that is largely our fault.
But are we completely screwed, or can we maybe solve some and fix this?
That's a completely fair question. It's right to think at sometimes that we are screwed with this, that there's not much that we can fully do. But I think one of the biggest and most important things that we can do is not ignore the issue whatsoever. I think that there are still ways that we can try and find to make this better. Politicians and big corporations historically have not been very adamant on helping the situation, rather putting very small, ineffective band-aids on it. There is a lot of, economic concern that comes into it that a lot of governments and politicians are not too fond of when it comes to helping this issue.
Well, who can help them? Because I know not a lot of people actually put their feet down on the ground and help.
100%, I agree. This is where journalists come into play. I think journalists are a very important factor when it comes to this situation, because journalists are the watchdog of the people. Their job is to provide the public with as much information and news on this as they can. If the journalism is being put to good use, it should all be truthful information. Not only is the journalism related to climate change on a very surface level, such as reporters reporting on things like hurricanes, superstorms, and stuff like that, but it also comes to when journalists are pressing big corporations and politicians on changes that need to happen. A lot of journalists are, their job is to sort of go and seek out sources and talk to people to try and get answers on these sort of things. So they play such a big role when it comes to this. Journalists covering climate change allows the public to feel a more personal connection to what is going on, rather than another politician talking about it, which, a lot of people aren't really gonna believe a lot of the time, unfortunately. They provide on the ground real-time information about all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's completely true. I think when a lot of people think of journalism, they think about news reporters reporting on natural events that happen quite often nowadays, and you don't really think about the real deep inspection of politicians and actual policies being formed on it.
100%. I mean, yeah, the very surface level with this is just the sort of reporting like you see when there's hurricanes in Texas and in Florida and stuff like that, reporting on those superstorms, which is a big part of it. But it's there's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah, especially like independent ones going out and interviewing big corporations, which is quite rare, or state politicians. And because they can definitely get more information than your average Joe on the street that doesn't quite know anything about science or how the policies are put in place.
100%, exactly. The journalists are specifically trained to ask the right questions and to make sure that the public is provided with the proper information on this.
So how detrimental is the temperature for the Earth?
Well, it's extremely. Even at just a couple degrees increase, entire habitats and species not built for the substantial increases in temperature over time will completely die out. Resources will be depleted to lower numbers because crops and plants cannot grow. And a rise in temperature is always significant to our Earth. It affects absolutely everything around us. Ocean acidification, habitats, animals, everything comes into play when the temperature rises.
So what are some solutions to this? Because the more you talk, the more I feel like that this is going pretty downhill fast.
Yeah, it's a hard topic to talk about because a lot of times it doesn't seem like there's a way out of this, or that the scale is too big to sort of cover. So it's a completely fair thing to say, Johnny, but at a large level, governments and corporations need to be held accountable for these things. Pushing for renewable energies, it should be one of the top priorities to combat this. Renewable energies are the thing that we should be focusing on moving towards because it can lower, emissions and stuff like that. Reducing overall emissions and having regulations on these. Gas and oil companies are huge when it comes. They're a huge contributor when it comes to destroying our environment. Putting more restrictions on where they can drill and where these rigs and stuff like that are set up to prevent leaks and other negative outcomes. I mean, there are countless examples of oil companies, gas companies that have had detrimental leaks and explosions and stuff like that can destroy certain environments. So it's really those corporations are a big contributor to a lot of the negative effects that happen in our environment.
It is hard to get these people because, they got so much going on as well. So, the last thing on their mind is some low-life people, as you'd say, comparing them to like them as they're sitting up in their high chair,
exactly.
Making billions off of a gas that can run the world but also destroy the world.
Yeah, it's extremely unfortunate that, and I do agree that a lot of these big corporations and politicians do tend to look at us, the people, as sort of lower than them. That we don't matter nearly as much as the deals going on and all this stuff. So all that is a very valid concern, but again, this is why I feel journalism is so important here. Getting more journalists to cover climate change could bring this issue way more into the light. Constantly showing it to the world that this is our number one priority and issue through stories, articles, interviews with the politicians. All of these things put pressure on the people making the big decisions for us. The more the public is aware of this and the more public outrage there is for this, the more demand there is for change. So it is unfortunate that not everyone agrees on climate change and that some people don't take it as seriously as others. But with increased coverage on it, more information and more light being shed on it, it could be seen as more serious, hopefully, to more people.
Why don't you think that's already happening though? I feel like a lot of people know about climate change, but they just don't really, do they not know what actions to take? Why do you think this is just not going where
A big part of it is at an individual level, it is very hard for us to think, well, how can I, just me, make a change? But it is very important that it does come down to an individual level, because as individuals, we can all do certain things to make sure that we are contributing to make sure that, we're not further destroying our environment. And on top of that, there's also a divide when it comes to journalists. In the journalism world, when it comes to covering climate change, many of the journalists believe that it is not necessarily their job to be covering something like this, especially because many of them do not have the level of understanding about the issue as some of the experts. Many news organizations have argued that going deep into this issue is not something worth their time. However, I believe these issues are just as important as anything else journalists cover, if not the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree, honestly. I just don't want this world to be living unlivable.
I agree with you, and don't worry, we can hopefully try and do some things to make a change. Like I said earlier, you yourself can help in every way you can on an individual level. Conservation is one of the biggest things. Conserving your energy, recycling, taking the bus like the Apple Cart, reusing things that can be reused. All these things are great ways that we can help as on an individual level to contribute to this. It's all a part of conservation. Conservation is one of the biggest things that we can help with this.
Yeah, I can continue to contribute, reduce, reuse, recycle, continue to, take the bus, try to practice great climate change activities. And I feel like I learned a lot here about this issue and this ongoing thing that's pretty big in today's world and society.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Johnny.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been delightful.
Thank you all for listening.